Hi, I'm Mark and this is Foothill Paint Fabrication. Today we're back on the 1950 Chevy truck fenders. We have the fronts and the rears we'll be working on today. We're going to be color sanding them and then polishing them. So I'll go over everything I do step by step to get the clear nice and smooth and super shiny. So let's get some sandpaper out and get to it. Okay, let's go over some of the things that we'll be using today to sand and polish these fenders. So sandpaper first. Now I could use the DA. I have the Hook It system here. It's a foam DA pad with an intermediate pad and the 1200 disc. It Velcros on. Everything Velcros on this. It can get wet. It's no big deal. So I got a whole box of 1200 3M sanding discs. I probably won't use the DA on these fenders. They're so round. I'll do it all by hand. But if it was a different kind of car, big flat deck lid or a hood or the top of the car, I use the DA all the time. Saves my elbow and tendonitis. So, but sanding, I'll use wet and dry 1200 and then I'll use wet and dry 1500. So I'll go over it, some of the bad areas with 1200, then I'll switch over to 1500 and do the whole fender. Now, this clear was shot 2 days ago. So we're on the third day and we're already sanding and polishing. I could have done it yesterday, but I let it cure out a little bit longer. So we're going to go over to the polish side now. And so I use foam discs. If you're still using wool pads, you need to switch to foam. This is a game changer, really. I use 3M system. These are TCP pads. I get them from Amazon, I believe. All three of them plus the backing pad, I think is 25 bucks. I'm not sure. I haven't bought them in a while. But they're super cheap and it's way to go. So red is coarse, so use that with the number 1 3M polish. Then the blue is for the number 2, and then the black is the ultra fine, and that goes with the number 3. So the polish isn't cheap, but it's well worth it. This is your dream car or your daily driver or whatever. You put a lot of money into paint and labor getting it this far. Spending some more money on polish is well worth it, trust me. So as far as what I use to sand with, I have my trusty sanding pad here and I have my block of cherry wood. And I'll use this to hit some of the nubbins, and I saw a little bit of crap in one of the fenders, so I'll use that and I can just, it's so flat and hard, I can just hit the tops and get that knocked off and then just go back to sanding like normal. So let's get the bucket of water out here and start sanding. Okay, we got a few small nubbins. You can see one right here. It's very hard to see. I just wiped the dust off of it so it disappeared. Very hard to see it, but it's there. We've got one right over here. I think you can maybe see that one right there. And a few more on the fenders. You can maybe see there's one right here. And like I said earlier, a lot of times that'll be a blob of clear. It'll dry on your gun a little bit and then shoot out, or it could be, anything floating in the air, or come off your body or the car. So I'm going to go around sanding all those off first with the hard block, and then we'll switch over and start sanding with just the soft block and just cover the whole fender. Okay, I try to get a shot of what we sanded off here. Now you can see I did the 1200 with that hard cherry block, and I got that nubbin off there. So, and there was one over here. I found all the ones on the front fenders, and that'll happen. You'll get stuff in your clear. I mean, that's just the way it is. So there's one right here. It's just a little bit of it left, but it's smooth and flat. So when we had 2 or 3 up here on top, and that's normal because obviously anything floating will land on it, and a couple over on the side there. So we're going to switch over to the sanding pad and some 1500 grit. And I'm just going to go over how I do it real quick, and then off camera I'll sand everything. Okay, I've got my 1500 sandpaper here. I got my sanding pad. You'll notice on the sanding pad it's got this kind of textured side and then a smooth side. I always put the textured side towards the sandpaper. You'll actually see that texture in the clear when you're sanding. It just goes to show how much the block you're using affects the quality of your sanding. So we got my bucket of water over here. I don't put soap in it or anything like that. I just put water in it. And I'm going to sand, staying away from these edges. This clear is 2 days old. and it sands fairly easy. So you don't want to be getting carried away. And if you're sanding and you feel like, right now I can feel like something rolling around underneath there, you want to stop, rinse the sandpaper off, and then rinse the area with your hand. So that could have been a little nubbin or something that broke loose when I was sanding. The last thing you want is a grain of sand or a piece of dirt or something that maybe got stuck in the clear and you just sanded it loose. You don't want to drag it around on the clear while you're sanding. So always make sure that you go to the bucket often. I'm sanding in the shop. This isn't going to create a lot of water. It's just me sanding like this, and I'll push up close to that edge, but I will not go over the edge. So I'm watching very closely where my sanding lines go, just to make sure. And what I'll like to do is just kind of go over the whole thing lightly and keep even pressure with my hand. And now this is a low area here, so I'm going through it. I'm not trying to go across it. I'm not trying to go down the center of it. I'm kind of thinking about like when I block sanded this. Keep even pressure and stay away from that edge. Just like this. So another thing I use, and it's a good tool to have, is a squeegee. Now this is all plastic, so you don't want to use one with any metal on it at all. I used to have one in the shop. It was an old one, had a little metal, and I ended up scratching some clear because I bumped it. So I use this one. It's an OXO. I think it came from Target a million years ago. And instead of trying to use a towel all the time, what I do is I just use a squeegee. And I don't get ones with silicone. There's a lot of them with silicone blades. This has a rubber blade on it. No silicone in the shop, no silicone near your paint job. I don't care if it's cured silicone. I don't want to rub it on this clear. Now, what happens if I screw up or I have to reshoot clear and I've been rubbing a silicone squeegee over it, right? It could cause a problem. I don't want to take that chance. So anyways, we've got it squeegeed off here, and just blowing on it real quick will dry that, and I can see. And I don't know if you can see, but right through here, I need to sand a little more. That's the bottom of that. But right through here, I can see it is completely flat. There's no orange peel little bumps or anything at all. So I know that area is pretty good. I need to concentrate in here a little more, and I will do that before I move over to the round areas here. This is the easy spot. These little contours and everything, that's the hard spot. So we're going to concentrate on this. We got fresh sandpaper. It's going to go quick. I got my squeegee. I got everything I need to get this done. So I'm just going to sand this out, and I'll bring you back. I'm going to concentrate on this and down in this area here and get this whole area sanded. And we'll see, we'll see about how long it takes. Okay, I spent about 35 minutes on this fender, maybe 40. As you can see, it's sanded completely. What you're looking for is no orange peel, and it depends on how beautiful you want it to look. So as you can see up here, I stayed away from the edge. When the polisher is polishing, it will come over that edge and take care of anything that's along that edge, no problem. And then I went ahead and got all the way around here. Once again, I stayed away from edges. The polisher will take care of that. And it looks pretty good. I don't know if you can see it at an angle. And I made sure where I sanded with the 1200 that I covered those well when I was sanding with 1500 to make sure that I got all the 1200 sand scratches out. So this fender's ready to polish, but I'm going to go ahead and sand all the others, and then we'll start talking about how we polish. Okay, so we have all the panels wet sanded. I'm happy the way they turned out. We're not shooting for show quality. This is supposed to be just a nice driver, so I'm not going to get down and dirty on every little nook and cranny. But the panels were taken outside, washed them with soap and water, rinsed them well, and you always want to make sure when you're done wet sanding that you wash the panels really well. You don't want to reintroduce any of that sanding debris back in while you're polishing, even just a little bit. All it's going to do is clog your pad, or you're just going to drag it around while you're trying to polish. So it's really important to keep everything clean. Now in between steps, you can just use a terry cloth towel to wipe off all the dust and the residue and take a good look at the panel, see if you need to hit anywhere else. But after you're done sanding, always wash them with soap and water, get them super clean, and then dry them off. So we're gonna go ahead and jump right into polishing. I've got the perfect system here I've been using for years. This is number 1. I've got the red kind of a waffle shaped pad on here. I'm gonna be trying out a smoother pad as well. That should be here tomorrow. And then I just got my, I was gonna say crappy Harbor Freight polisher, but really it's not crappy because they're inexpensive and they're lightweight. I've had more expensive polishers, they weigh more. I don't like the ergonomics of them, and you know, really, I think this is my 3rd one. I've done a lot of cars and I just run them till they burn up and then I just chuck them and get another one when they're on sale. So it's really a good deal, variable speed, easy to handle, and I really like it. So we're gonna just jump right in here. I'll get the camera zoomed in a little closer so you can see what I'm doing. And I'll show you how we go from 1500 to really a pretty smooth, shiny surface with just the first step. Okay, so I like to get my pad damp before I start. So I'll dip it, I'll go rinse it or whatever, and then wring it out, put it on the polisher and just spin it, spin it out to dry it off a little bit. And then give your polish a good shake. And then we're gonna we're gonna work small areas. I'm gonna try to stay in there where you can see. So we're gonna get the polish on the pad really well. Otherwise, if you just go at it high speed, it's just gonna fling it out everywhere. You may have noticed I'm wearing an apron. I started using this years ago because my t-shirts all had lines straight across them. So when we're polishing this edge, we wanna make sure the polishing wheel goes this direction. We don't wanna cut in because it'll hit and roll over that edge right there, and then that could burn through. So we always wanna make sure the rotation is away all the time. And you don't want it super fast because you'll warm up the polish and it'll start drying out before it does its job. Now you saw the pad start to jump and hop on me, and that's because it's starting to dig in a little bit and doesn't have enough polish to smooth it out. So normally we'd add a little more polish right now. I'm gonna wipe that off so we can take a look and see how we're doing. So what we're looking for is that we removed all the sand scratches. We're not trying to make it perfectly shiny at this point. That's for the other steps and the other polishing pads. But looking right down in here, I'm sure you can see down here, it's more dull. So I can see right in here, I've got all the sand scratches out except for 1 or 2. And then over here, I need to do some more work. So it's looking really good. This system works super fast. I mean, I don't know what I was in that thing, 30 seconds, 45 seconds. And just make sure you don't overheat your panels. Always do this inside, early in the morning when it's cool. What that does, it keeps your polish from drying out quicker, and then you're adding more polish and going through that stuff faster. So, but this is looking excellent right now. So I'm gonna work this really good. One caveat is watch out for sharp edges, because these foam pads, you know, when I'm polishing right here, I don't want to hook this, and they got one over here. I got to be careful around it. It just tears those pads to bits in seconds. There'll be foam flying everywhere, and you'll have to buy another one. So just be aware of that when you're polishing, that you want to stay away from sharp edges and try to work up close to them without hitting them. So I'm going to throw some more polish on here, and we're going to work this area real quick. And then I'm going to move on to another area. So that's about as big as you want to work, especially when you're new to this. You want to work just a couple of 2-foot area. That way the polish doesn't dry out, and then you stay focused on one section at a time and then just keep moving around. Okay, let's just wipe that down. It's important to remember that while you're polishing, you're removing clear. So when you're wiping this off, you're not just wiping haze from the polish, you're wiping residue from the clear that you're removing to make this thing look good. Now these fenders are wobbling around a lot. The rack is not quite flat on the ground for some reason. It's making it a little harder for me to push down like I want. You want to push down fairly firmly, but not hard. Last thing you want to do is overheat the panel. So that's warm to the touch. Not super warm, but still warm. And that's why it's good to do small areas at a time, and then you just move away from it. And then later you evaluate the panel, and then you go back and hit the little spots you missed. So I got a little spot there I don't like. Other here, this right here is perfect. This looks perfect. So these edges are going to be the hardest ones to do. The field of the panel, super easy. You don't have to worry about the wheel hitting on something or binding up, and then you can really get to going on it. So I like the way it's looking. Well, if you can see that. Now that's just with number 1. So I'll bring you in a little tighter, and we'll see how shiny it is. Okay, as you can see the fluorescent lights in the ceiling, this is super, super shiny right now, but it's not as shiny as it's going to be. So we're trying to smooth it out, excuse me, and get these sand scratches out. Now right here, I don't know if you can see, you probably can't, but there's some minute sand scratches from me wet sanding. They're gone over here, but they're still right here. So this edge, I tend to shy away from these edges for obvious reasons. So I just need to get in there and get that polished out and we'll be fine. This edge is fine. The wheel is turning away from it, so I'm not worried about digging in. So we're gonna get that done, and then we're gonna back away, and I'll get the rest of the panels done here on this, and then we'll switch over to the number 2. Now you notice when I'm doing a horizontal surface, I put the compound right on the panel. When I'm doing the vertical surfaces, I found a lot less compound hits the ground if I just put it on the pad and then smush it around a little bit. Okay, so I'm chasing a lot of residue on here. So I'm gonna go ahead and take this over to the hose. I'm gonna rinse it out really well, and then put it on here, fling it out, and get going again. So always try to keep your bonnets, your polishing pads clean. If it starts leaving a lot of residue, this wipes right off, by the way. But if you start chasing this stuff, then it's preventing you from actually polishing. You're just moving that goop around. So remember, we are taking some clear off. So a lot of this contains clear. So you want to keep that cleaned off there so the polish and the pad can do its work. So I'm going to go rinse this out real quick. We'll get right back at it. Okay, we got it all clean, rinsed out, and then I just spun it to get all the extra water out of it. So when we used to use wool pads, you would just take your tool and chase it, and it would knock all that compound out. You can't really do that with these because they just tear up. It's just foam after all. So just take it over to, if you don't have a hose nearby, just have a full bucket of water, get it in there, rinse it out real good, and wring it out and stick it right back on and sling it, and you're ready to go again. Okay, so that's, we got the number one done, basically the cut of it. Now, you can either wash all this off or you can just use a dry, soft cloth to wipe it off. I'll use the cloth. I'll just grab, I got an old bath towel here. You want to use a different towel for each number. So, and if this starts to get dirty, just grab a clean one. So we're just going to wipe it all off. Sometimes I'll get a wet cloth, and I'll wipe it down with that, and then I'll dry it with the next one instead of having to rub super hard on this thing. So I should have cleaned the pad earlier. I let it go too long. Okay, I went ahead and wiped down the whole thing with a damp cloth to get all that compound off, and then I dried it with a soft terry cloth towel. Now up here on top, it looks really good. I might see a scratch here or there. I'll have to check that out. But right through here, it's dull. And it's because I shied away from that because it's the outer edge, and I didn't want to, burn the paint or anything. Not that I was going to, but it's just me. I tend to back off a little bit when instead of just getting after it and getting it done. So now I have to go over this area again, and then I got a spot right here too, and a spot right here. Those rivets are right there, so I'm kind of making sure I don't linger too long on those. So I'll work these areas one little thing at a time and wipe them down and make sure I get it done. And then we'll go over it again real quick, make sure, find any spots before we move on to the next step. Don't try to fix something you should have done with the first step with the second step. It's a big mistake. So you've got the pad on there, you got your number one polish out, so just go ahead and get everything done, get it done, and then before you move on. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit my spots I didn't get good enough, and then we'll bring you back. Okay, we're done cutting. I had to go over 2 or 3 more spots. As soon as I got one spot done, I wiped everything down, I found another one, so it's important just to meticulously go over it so you don't have to revert back. I mean, I may polish this and find some sand scratches when I'm in the second step. If that happens, I just clean it up, put the other pad back on, grab the number one and hit that area, clean it up, and go back to number 2. But it's good if you can keep in the right process, right steps, so you have to keep going back and forth. So I try to eyeball it really well, but it doesn't mean that I didn't miss a spot. So we're gonna go ahead and hit this with the number 2. I've got the blue pad on. I've got the number 2 Perfect System polish, and this will go super fast. The number 1, the cut, takes all the work and all the effort. You're pushing harder. You have to use a lot more compound. You're removing sand scratches basically, and now you're just removing, with the number 2, you're removing what the cut left behind, which is micro scratches. So we're going to get those out, and this thing will really be shiny. So let's jump on it. Okay, so we're done with the number 2. Just wiping it down here. This stuff comes off so much easier than cutting. So it wipes off really easy. Like I said, you're working a lot less harder. You're just removing the ultra fine scratches from the cut. You're not removing sand scratches from wet sanding. So it came out really nice. My little rivets here look good. I think it came out great. So normally I would cut all the parts, then polish all the parts. But for this, to shoot the video, I just did the 1 fender. So I still have the 3 fenders to do and those 2 little trim pieces. But I think it came out really well. It's super smooth. So if we set this up here, it'll probably, yep, see, it slides right off. That's how smooth that is. I want to scratch it with a bottle. But came out great. I'm happy the way they look. I'm sure the owner is going to be thrilled with the way they look. They look a million times better than they ever did the whole life of the truck. So this thing's going to come out really nice. I'm going to switch over and finish cutting everything, and then I'll bring you back when they're all done, and we can take a look at them out in the sun. Okay, walking around them out in the sun. They look good. It doesn't look like it missed any spots. They're very shiny and very smooth. So it's early morning sun, so it's hard to tell, but I don't know if you can see me in the camera right there in the reflection. So it is damn shiny. Okay, that just about wraps up this video on color sanding and polishing these 1950 Chevy truck fenders. We got all 6 pieces done, the 2 trim pieces as well. They came out beautifully. I know the owner is going to be thrilled with the way they look. The next step for these will be undercoating, but we're going to actually use bed liner instead of undercoating to give them even more protection from rock chips and rust and other damage. So thanks for joining me here at Foothill Paint Fabrication. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button and hit that bell icon so you get a notification every time I release a new video.